Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervase Charmley. This is a Derbyshire church now. This is the Church of All Saints, Dalbury in Derbyshire. It's not very far off the A50, but it feels like the middle of nowhere. It's a tiny little village at the end of a lane that leads off a relatively minor road. And at the bottom of the lane, there is the church. It's small, it's ancient, parts of it may date back as early as the 11th century, that of course is the century of the Norman Conquest, but the larger part of the building dates from the late 12th, early 13th century. It's the aisle that you can see is added in the 1840s. And the 1840s really is the period that's represented by this building. It really is. It's a early 19th century, late 18th century building, and it has some amazing, fascinating features from that period, again, just before the influence of the Cambridge Ecclesiological Society, and they have this, ecclesiological in their case doesn't mean doctrine of the church, it simply means church architecture. And they have this very, I would say, pedantic view. I mean, originally, the original, what's called the Camden Society, then became the Ecclesiological Society, they have this rather pedantic view of medieval architecture, which is a rather ironic view in that actually what they end up doing is trying to conform medieval buildings to that. But this is a building that hasn't been Victorianized. The Victorians have not got their mitts on it and ripped out the interior. We've got box pews, we've got a really lovely setting for the font. Well, no need for me just to talk about them. I'm here, let's have a look around. As usual, we start at the west end. Now, as we look around here, note a number of things, one of which is the alabaster pulpit. There's alabaster quarries locally here, so alabaster is quite a soft stone, veined, very beautiful. Alabaster readily available even for a small church like this, for the pulpit. And the pulpit is, well, we'll see when we get up there. There is, as you can see, also box pews, lots and lots of box pews, full set in fact. And we'll see when we get, as we go around, how they're arranged. We've got here at the back, this is a nice example of a big family box pew. You can see inside you've got seating on three sides. Up at the back here, this is where the church wardens would have sat. Now that is not the organ there. There would have been at one point a harmonium in that position, or a very small organ. Those are just fake organ pipes with an eagle at the top. But it's an example of the sort of wood carving you've got here. At some point, the big house here has had sufficient money to do that. Here we have the, I won't say tower arch, more turret arch, little bell turret, which looks quite cute when you get outside. You can see now that you've got a little refreshment area has been put in this rear box pew here, and good idea. This would have been, I suspect, actually where the singers would have been, and then you've got these fake organ pipes here setting for a little harmonium type thing. This is the font. This is, if it has older origins, it's been recut in the 1840s, I suspect, but it's been placed within a wonderful setting. We've got this carved Georgian canopy, which certainly there's evidence, I mean, you see there, it's originally that it would have been able to go up and down. You've got a carved dove sticking out of the woodwork there, of course representing the Holy Spirit. The bowl there of the font, and the font itself is carved with a dove. It's a wonderful piece of work, and it's the sort of thing, I mean, it's sub-Grinling Gibbons, but it's the sort of thing that would be very, very impressive, particularly in a little village like this. You'll see there the lights, which are the old oil lamps, have been turned into electric lights, and in these cases the shades have come off, so you can see what's actually going on. But the other ones still have their shades, so they look like oil lamps. It's just when you turn them on, you realize, oh, it's electric. Here we have seating at the back, desk, books for sale, quite a common way of raising a bit of extra money from visitors. The church here is always open, which is a very nice thing. Here we have more box pews. The box pews, of course, would have been rented. You'd have had somebody would have paid some money. Well, the family would have paid a subscription every year for their box pew. And people today often are somewhat offended by this. The reality is, it was simply a way of guaranteeing a steady income, a steady, stable income for the church. That you'd say, well, we've got so many pew holders, and this is how much. Therefore, and it helped with budgeting, basically. Today, we've generally gone over, and Anglican churches as well as free churches, to a voluntary offering. Of course, pew rents were in some sense voluntary, but if you wanted a decent place to sit, you had to pay for it. This particular pew, you see, you've got the door here, and it opens, and that's a tip-up seat that means that you've got a full row there. And these pews are all facing the pulpit. This is quite common that the aisle pews, some of them at least, will be facing towards the pulpit. This is a pulpit-centred, word-centred layout. It's not a Oxford Movement sacramental layout. The pulpit's a two-decker, which is the smaller version of the historic three-decker. It's a similar arrangement. It's a reading desk and pulpit, no parish clerk's desk. There would have been, I suspect, a three-decker here, but it's been replaced with this two-decker, which is quite a nice two-decker. We have here a piece of ancient stained glass. This is, of course, medieval. This is St. Michael. You can tell by his wings, because he's an angel, the Archangel Michael, and he is, suppose, 14th century, I mean, maybe a bit older. Let's have a look at these again. I'm just going to have a look at ancient stained glass, dating from 1200, so it's 13th century. I thought it looked a bit different from a 14th century one, so that is 13th century, early 13th century. So about the time that the current church was built, or massively rebuilt. Here we have the pulpit, and we have, you can see how thin the alabaster is here. Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only. So you've got your high alabaster pulpit, reading desk beside it. The parish clerk, I suppose, would have been around here somewhere. Some open seating. Most of the seating here is box pews. There would have been some benches, probably over there for the poor of the parish. There's a bit of nice woodwork here. And here we have the war memorial to the glory of God and in memory of the following men of Dalbury parish who gave their lives in the Great War 1914-1918. Lieutenant Sidney Madeley, King's Royal Rifles, killed in action. Sergeant Moses Holloway, Sherwood Foresters, killed in action 1918. It's notable that Lieutenant Madeley, there's no date given for his death. Private James Holmes, Royal Irish Rifles, killed in action November 1916. Private Percy Fox, Sherwood Foresters, July 1917, which probably means that he died of his wounds after the battle, or may have died of disease. So here's the alabaster pulpit, and again, say alabaster here is a local material. It hasn't been shipped in. And here we have this wonderful view with all these box pews. A beautiful example of this. And then we've got the roof. The roof is, again, 1840s. It's in a sort of perpendicular style, sort of Tudor Gothic style, which is, again, very nice. See there, and the sunlight shining through the alabaster. It's great to come here on a sunny day because that's what you see, particularly in the morning when the sun is streaming through the windows on the south side. We've got here these very nice choir stalls. As is quite common, there's been some Victorianisation in the chancel, but not a huge amount. The arrangements here are still quite low church. You can see here the communion rail, that's obviously Victorian. Small table, and I suspect that table is quite old. Now here we've got a couple of memorials for parish clerks. So Isaac Smith, formerly clerk of this church, but latterly clerk of Trustley Church, that's just up the road. God willing, be able to get in there later today. He was also bailiff of this manor 40 years. He lived respected and died lamented April the 8th, 1838, aged 73. So parish clerk. And here we have memory of John Bond, clerk of this church and labourer at the rectory. And this is one of these things. The parish clerk is an important man in the parish, but his position, he's still usually a man of, he's a working man, and he's labourer at the rectory, 34 years, died December the 20th, 1846, aged 85. Parish clerks often were men who, older men, and 84, and Isaac Smith, 73, and 1838, 73 is quite a good age. Mine age is not, highly respectable who knew him. Mine age is nothing in respect of thee, for 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday. And here we have the inside of the pulpit, and last time I visited here it was a little bit disturbed, but clearly it has been restored, which is very nice, very good. And here we are, this is the reading desk. This is where the minister would conduct the services from, and then he'd just go up the pulpit for the sermon. And there we are. I'm not actually in the pulpit, just the cameras in the pulpit. And there's the candlestick. Very important back in the day when there would not have been, of course, electric light. You've got a nice window for daytime services, but you need candles for evening services. So that's reading desk and pulpit, two-decker. The organ, nice organ case. You can see it's a single manual. I can't see any maker's marks on it. We've got 5 stops, single manual, and a small pedal board. That's the very small pedal board. Can't see any maker's mark. I'll just lift up the cover here carefully. Here we are. Here we go. It's Flight and Robson Organ Builders to HRH, the Prince Regent, number 101 St Martin's Lane, London. So that gives us a ballpark date. It's a Regency organ. Unusual, because Regency is that period during which the future King George IV rules on behalf of his father, George III, during that famous madness of King George III at the end of George III's life. So it's a Regency organ. The pipes at the front, of course, are fake. They're actually wooden, carved wooden and then painted. It's a beautiful case, and it's a very rare example of a little Regency organ. Sort of thing you'd find in a country house more often than in a parish church, but very, very lovely. Here we have Hannah and young Samuel in a window. Now here we have one of the posh monuments. Francis Harris, Ecclesiae Anglicanae Presbyter, Rector de Brobury in Comite Hereford. So he's the rector of Brobury, so he's a presbyter of the Church of England, a rector of Brobury in Herefordshire, and also connected with Radbourne, which is up the road here. And he dies when 1709, yes. And look at this angel at the bottom. I mean, 1709 angel Great fun. I do like this. We've got some very nice commandment balls. They too appear to be Regency. The east window, we've got the crucifixion at the top, and then we've got the arms of the what I presume to be the Lord of the Manor underneath. Carvings from an old Georgian reredos, and again those rather crude angels, a bit like this chap. The reredos is gone, but the carvings have been salvaged. So it's a fascinating building, this one, because you have got this sort of Regency, it's a very Regency feel to it in terms of the pews, the organ. You've got these Georgian memorials, these I think Regency era commandment boards. I'm just going to see if I can see around the back here of the. Now the communion table is properly shrouded, but I do think that from its size, that's probably going to be Regency as well. That lovely early 13th century chancel arch. These nice windows at their square heads. George Gretton AM, that of course is Artis Magister, rector of this church in Trusley, Nethill parish, died 7th of October 1732, aged 44, and Mary his wife, the 15th of June 1746, aged 46. Incredibly young, and particularly as you're thinking, this is a clergyman and his wife, these are members of the gentry class, it's not your common labourers. So they have a better diet. Now here we have a seat that's EW 1689, good year. Of course that's just after, the year after the Glorious Revolution, the year after the overthrow of James II and the installation of William and Mary as joint sovereigns of the United Kingdom, well not the United Kingdom, yes, joint sovereigns of England, Wales, and also of Scotland and Ireland. But of course the Scottish crown is separate, and I think technically the Irish one is as well, but it's a funny business. The United Kingdom doesn't happen until a bit later on. And so you've got, and continuing with that, of course it's the Glorious Revolution that secures a Protestant monarchy for this country. We've got a nice bit of tile on the floor, and also memorial here to James Beard, who departed this life the 11th, I think, of July 1782, aged 70 years. He was a most affectionate husband, indulgent parent, and a friend to the distressed. So, again, 18th century. And it's just a lovely building. It's tiny, it's intimate, it's very, very historic. It has this business that the Victorians have barely touched it. I think the only major Victorian work is going to be that communion rail, which was replaced an earlier one, and this pulpit, which as a two-decker is archaic, really, for the Victorians. I like it. It's very good. And I'm not a great fan of stone pulpits, but here we've got this rather interesting business with the whole thing being alabaster, and that's a peacock outside, you may have heard it. Alabaster, and the sunlight just shining through the alabaster. It's a very, very interesting effect. Here we have the royal arms. By law, all Anglican churches, because it's the church established, are required to display the royal arms. And here, this is going to be Queen Victoria. There's a number of ways you can tell that, to do with the design. One of them is that we haven't got the arms of Hanover, which you would have for the monarchs, well, the kings from George I through William IV. So there's no royal arms of Hanover. Secondly, the Lion and the Unicorn are, well, shall we just say that they are not quite anatomically correct. Previous ones would have been, well, Queen Victoria regarded them as vulgar, put it that way. So this is Queen Victoria, the arms of Queen Victoria, and substantially, of course, what the arms of Charles III look like today. So they're that lovely two-decker. They're relatively rare two-deckers. They are, after all, a sort of stripped-down version of three. I can see a plaque on this one. Might tell me what the date when it was set up. But excuse me, manoeuvre this so I can see. And so, to the glory of God, and in memory of John. Well, I'll have a look before going outside, but I can't see. And you can see you've got this display of plants. Someone's put some hops around the capital there, which is quite nice. Again, it livens up the place. Beautiful building. It's not very far from Derby, actually, and so just really off the little way off the A50. And as you can see, so worth a visit. Really is. Well, that's the inside. Let's go outside. Before going fully outside, you can see here by the door in the porch we've got these marks, and these are from people sharpening things, often arrowheads, by the door. Why would you be sharpening arrowheads by the door? Well, because very often bow practice, shooting practice will be done in the churchyard. And of course the point about the bow is it's to make sure that we have the ability to defend ourselves if we're attacked by the Scots, which did happen. The pulpit, by the way, is 1862, so yeah, as I thought, Victorian. And so here we are outside at Dalbury. I mean, look at this gorgeous building. Look at this tiny little turret there with the bells, the brick, probably 18th century brick porch. This 12th or 13th century break of the toe with the turn of the century there. Nave and chancel. Gorgeous, isn't it? Let's have a look around. So, let's say this is the building outside. You can see these nice big stone, these nice big slate gravestones. Very typical of this period again, or this area rather. Chancel is definitely 13th century. Nave, they say some bits of it may go back as far as the 11th century. You can just see here how one of the original windows here has been altered, but the original paired lancets, very nice. Primroses in the graveyard. It's spring, it's beautiful. You can see here at the east end, this is where, of course, the east window. Go round the north side where you've got the aisle. As I've noted before, north side aisles, normal. 1840s, you can see that. Stonework there is so typical. But they've tried to imitate and reproduce the style of the original work in the building. So very well done, and that beautiful little turret. I mean, how can you not love a little turret like that? It's not even straight anymore. It's a little bit wonky, which is beautiful. It's one of the original lancets there. You can see there the contrast between the stonework, old and new, and back around here to the west end. And so there we go, Dalbury, All Saints, this beautiful interior, and this beautiful, simple, plain little parish church. It's a wonderful setting, down here, at the end of a little lane, so quiet, so peaceful, and a place of worship for hundreds and hundreds of years. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.